Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Swaha, Tat Savitra Varenyam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Satkamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityurma Mritam Gamya. Om Sahna Bhavatu Sahna Bhunaktu Sahviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Nav Adhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. Let's open our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and we started the section 2 of chapter 4 last week. And I was telling you that in this section, there is an inquiry about the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. But the ultimate purpose is to analyze the nature of the true self, though. And we'll see that the same subject continued in the next section also. And another thing I was telling you that we should never forget the fact that all inquiry which we do is made while we are in the waking state. Because the other states, we become the object of the inquiry. It's very difficult to do the inquiry. Normally, we think ourselves as separate, isolated individuals. Even though we are a member of a family, some places we are related, some places we are unrelated. There are some enemies, some friends. Then we have the countries also, or a status in our society also. But the truth is that we are all connected with this whole universe. We are all connected vitally and organically. And this oneness exists among the individual beings themselves and the objects of this world also. Even the science says that. But the statements in the scriptures and the experience of the wise people has been the same all along. We see the influence of the sun and the moon on earth, influence of other planets and stars also. We all know that our breath would stop if we think that this is a small planet only, the earth, and nothing else is affecting us. So that's why when we study scriptures like this, these rishis, they are bringing our attention to this oneness, the whole universe, because there's a very deep implication in our own lives. So this is the secret of oneness of existence, which we see in this Upanishad again and again. In the waking state, the self is stated to be in the right eye. We'll see that in the second verse, which we're going to start today. This rishi called it Indh. Indh, which this word itself suggests lustrous, illuminating, the radiance, the eyes. The great non-dual reality becomes the individual jiva and acts through the mind and the senses. And eyes are one of the senses. It not only illumines the intellect, but also the objects outside. So it is this same name, Indra, which is commonly known as Indra also, the king of the celestials in the heaven, the chief among the organs in the body. So over here in this Upanishad, we will see very interesting remark that even as respected and elderly persons do not like to be called by their direct names, gods also do not like to be referred to by their direct names. So scriptures have changed Indra into Indra. So this really reveals the secret of the impersonal nature of the gods who dislike personal and direct approach. Then in another verse, we'll see the left eye, which is the counterpart of the right eye, is symbolized as the wife of Indra. So the two eyes stand for the cosmic Virat and his own energy. Every activity in the waking state involving subject and object relationship starts from the heart, and when the activity stops, the mind returns to its source. Our Upanishadic rishis, the seers, they were well versed in physiology and psychology, and also a lot of other connected subjects to that. They knew how mind worked in the dreaming state. The mind, they say, goes into the space inside the heart. There is a network of very subtle nerves, which no scientific instrument has so far discovered or able to discover. The heart is said to be the inner chamber for the consciousness and its energy to rest after the work in the waking state. And this heart is not the physical pumping heart organ. The subtle nerves referred to are here are hit. He'll use that Sanskrit terms, signifying that they are very conducive and helpful, those nerves. And these nerves are the passage to the mind to move in dream, experiencing pleasure and pain without the help of the external objects. And we experience that every night. Without any connection with the outer world, we experience sometimes pain, sometimes pleasure. Passing through the two states of waking and dream, the self in deep sleep enters into the deepest recess in the heart. When it completely disconnects itself from both the external as well as the internal world. And the ego principle, which dominates in the waking state, where does that go? It boils down into an ethereal substance in the dream and almost into a vacuum in the deep sleep. So no ego there in the deep sleep. So the ego, which is really nothing, but it assumes everything in the waking state, that I amness. And outcome of that is that it suffers disappointment, failure, frustration. When the ego subsides in the deep sleep, the pran, which is universal, energizes, enlivens the whole system. And this is the really secret of us getting refreshed and revitalized when we wake up from a good sleep, especially the good deep sleep. And it is a very simple and well-known fact that the undisturbed sleep recoups the body as well as the mind. We have all experienced it. It's not that we are taking some vitamins or some nutritious food during sleeping or some kind of a tonic or some tablets. No, just a deep sleep. So in deep sleep, this Upanishad says that the cosmic pran, which is everywhere in the space, in all directions, energizes the body and the mind. Cosmic pran. The ego, which obstructing the inflow of this great cosmic energy in the waking state and also in the dreaming state to some extent, subsides in the deep sleep and enrushes the universal prana. And this universal prana, there's no limit to it. And we all are equally, we can take it. The whole cosmos embraces the Jeev in deep sleep. So the Jeev in sleep becomes one with the universal energy. In the waking state, the Jeev is thinking as a finite, mortal, miserable, realizes its real nature as the infinite, immortal, and blissful Atma. And this Atma is indescribable by any words. And that's why this Upanishad described it as a neti neti, not this, not this. Because it's incomprehensible, undecaying. So this section, we'll see that in the last verse of this section, saying that the supreme is fearlessness. Fearlessness. That is another term for the non-dual, unobjectified existence, knowledge, bliss. Sat, Chit, Anand. So in summary, this is what we are going to learn from this short section. There are only 4 verses in this section. And we looked at the first one where we saw the conversation and Rishi Yagyavalkya asking King Janak this question. And what did he ask him? He said, O Emperor, one wishing to travel a great distance would take either a chariot or a boat. In the same way, you are possessed of controlled mind along with these secret names of Brahma. You are wealthy. You are well versed in the Vedas, well read in the Upanishads. When liberated from this body, where will you go? Okay, he wants him to, because King Janak is his student, so he's asking him to think about it. And King Janak replied, I do not know that. Where will I go? Then Yagyavalkya said, then indeed, I tell you that where you would go. And then King Janak said, please tell me. Because he wants to know. So because at least at this point he knows that we have to leave the body. So the same thing we should contemplate also. Where will we go after leaving this body? Constantly we are planning our trips, whether they could be on the next street or next town or next country. But the body is going. But once we drop off the body, where will we go? Let's look at verse number 2. Indho have namesh yo ayam dakshine andhpurushaha tam va etam andham santam indra iti chakshate parokshanev paroksha priya iv hi deva pratyaksha dvishaha. This being who is in the right eye is verily called Indra. Though he is Indra, they indirectly call him Indra. For the gods are, as it were, the fond of indirect names and averse to direct names. And the culture we come from, we are familiar with it. We never call our parents by their names, grandparents by their name. There was a time even the husbands were not called by the wife with the name. Gurus also, teachers also. So that is the tradition. So Yajnavalkya is saying this. So he says the principle which is in the right eye is the special seat of manifestation of the Supreme Being. For all objective perception in the state of waking, so the individual consciousness is identified with the gross experiences of this external world. And he says, this being is called by the name Indra, on account of its being the enjoyer of the gross objects in the waking state. So the subtle form of the being is in the right eye, according to this Upanishad. So specially manifest in the right eye is the same as that which is the subtle principle in the sun. So the term Indra means illuminating or lustrous. So Indra is a direct name for that god. So this is about the waking state. Waking state where the right eye, which is generally the more powerful between the two, is the seat of perception, and from where it is transferred to other organs. So the right eye, it is called Vaishvanar also, right eye. So outwardly cognitive, our body with the limbs, with the mouth, enjoying the gross perceptions of the world in the waking state, and mainly through the eye, he says. Then he continued his discourse to explain to King Janak the answer to that question which he asked. Ath et tvamyakshni purush rupe mashe patni virat tyoresh samstavo yo esho antrahirdehe akasha ath en yore annamya esho antrahirdehe lohit pindaha ath en retat pravarnam yat etad hirdehe jalakamavi athen yoreshaha mriti samcharnehi yeshaha hridya udhurvaha nadyunjarti yatha kesha sahasrda bhin evam asya eta hita nam nadyo antahridye pratishtaha bhavanti et abhirva etat dasrvati tasmatesh praviktaha hartat ev bhatyehe kshar shariraha adi atmanaha. And this human form that is in the left eye is his wife. Viraj, matter. This space that is within the heart is their place of union. The mass of blood which is in the heart is their food. What looks like a net within the heart is their covering. The nerve that rises upward from the heart is their passage for moving. It is like a hair split into 1,000 parts. Numerous nerves of this body, called hita, are rooted in the heart. It is through these that the essence of food passes when it moves. Hence, the subtle body has finer food than the gross body. So we often pay attention to the gross food, but the subtle part of the food he's talking about. So he dealt with the form of the conscious principle in the right eye in the previous verse, which affects gross perception during the waking state. And this verse number 3 tells us about the form of that principle which is in the left eye. It is the other half of the principle which is externally cognitive, which is a substrate for all types of gross perceptions in the state of waking. And whenever these two forms unite, that means when a matter is enjoyed by its enjoyer, we really truly cognize the external universe of names, forms, thought, emotion, actions, body, and organs. Over here, husband and wife, that is like an analogy. So relationship between the right and the left eye, the twin instruments of cognition. This analogy is here just to show that the perception takes place in the waking state on account of the contact of the perceiver with the object of the perception. Not when one is missing. So the perception in the waking state is dependent upon both the subject and the object. Otherwise, the object could be there, but if the subject is not, you won't perceive it. So when both these are united, the right and the left, or the subject and the object, in the innermost space of the heart, it is known as the dream state of the individual. So in a sense, that's what he is trying to explain to us. What happens in the dream state? Swapanavastha. So this unity which takes place in the heart refers to that state of consciousness where the subject and the object distinctions vanish. Because in this state, mind alone is both the subject and the object. Because what happens in dream? Who is dreaming? The mind. Where is it seeing? In the mind. So mind is seeing itself. So that's why in the dream state, we are not dependent upon the material from the outside for experiences. The space in the innermost heart, which is the seat of all the impressions of the gross perceptions of the waking state of the individual consciousness, we see that inside. Or you can say subject and object, they become one. And this, what do we experience actually in our dream state? We are actually experiencing the subtle impressions of the waking state. Because those are the impressions which have been stored. So that's why if we have a pleasant waking state, the dream state will be predominantly pleasant too. So the self which was externally cognitive, and that is known as Vaishvanar. The same thing is termed as Tejas in the sleep state. Why the Tejas? Because of the virtue of his being the light itself. So in dreaming state, that God experiences his own greatness. He sees all, himself being all. We learned that in the Prashna Upanishad. Because in Prashna Upanishad, one of the young Rishi asked the question to the Guru, what is this dream state? But now a question may be raised, how when an individual is devoid of external perception, does not behold the touch, smell, sound, or taste, does not perform any other activity with the motor organs, how can he visualize different perceptions, hear different sounds, feel different sensations in the state of dream? And this verse is answering this question, says that storage of the impressions of the gross perception is the food. But then there are subtle impressions are stored. So the subtle impressions in the subtlest form of the gross enjoyment. So every experience in the waking state leaves a mark in the subconscious mind of the individual. We don't do it experience by experience, but it happens. That's the nature of our experiences. And in a course of time, all those experiences, they take the form of the vasana. And we know that those vasanas in turn assume the form of desire for repeating the experience. Desire. And all these are embedded in our subtle body, and they spring up in the dream state. So these impressions are the food. And that's why it's called Tejas. So food on which the subtle body is nourished. And there is a network of most subtle nerves in the innermost heart is the covering of both. And the self is withdrawn inside even as a couple withdraw themselves within a covering soon after when they want to sleep. So this is what happens to the self. So that's why he gave the analogy of a couple, husband and a wife. So this also indicates that the individual consciousness, which is externalized in the waking state, withdraws itself from the field of gross activity in a sleep state. So this may also mean that the body and the senses have gone to take rest after the hard work of the day. Needs rest. So the nerve hit, which we read in this mantra, which shoots upward from the heart where impressions are stored, is the passage or the path for the movement of both. It is through this passage the consciousness enters into the dream state, comes back to the waking state. Or we can say that this nerve is the passage for outward and the inward flow of individual consciousness. It's almost like in our house, we have a common door to go out and to come in. The same way, these are the doors. This nerve is very fine. And this Rishi is saying it is as fine as the hair, the thickness of which is split into 1,000 times. I mean, we know how thick the hair is, human hair. And if we split it into 1,000, that's how subtle it is. Or you can say it's extremely fine nerve, which is situated in the heart. So not just a physical heart again, it is a psychological heart. So these nerves, that's why they are not visible to the most powerful microscope. We humans cannot detect it, these nerves. When objective consciousness is withdrawn, it is through these nerves, then it gets united in the heart and becomes subjectively conscious and enjoys subtle objects, independent of the physical body and organs. So that's why in a dream state, we are not aware where we are sleeping, what is our body, what our relationships are. In a different world we are. But the impressions of the objects enjoyed in the waking state are revived in the dream condition, circulated through the network of these nerves, and again perceived through the mind. And this mantra states that this food passes and circulates throughout the body. So that means the effect of those dreams, because we are in a dream period, effect of that is on our entire body. Or you can say that the impressions are revived and perceived in the subtle body. And the subtle body is sure this nervous system also, all those minute nerves, our mind also, intellect also, ego also, chit also. Because this subtle body is inwardly conscious. That's why it is the perceiver of the subtle forms. So the self identified with the subtle body known by the name Tejas. So now let's look at the last mantra also, because this is the last one, number 4. तस्य प्राची दिक् प्रांचः प्राण दक्षिणा दिग् दक्षिणे प्राण प्रतीचि दिक् प्रत्यक्षः प्राण उदीचि दिगुंचः प्राणः उधर्वा दिग् ऊर्ध्वा प्राण अवाचि दिग् वाचः प्राणः सर्वा दिशा सर्वे प्राण स एष नेति नेत्यात्मः अगृहो न गृह्यते अशीर्यो न शीर्यते असंगो निसज्यते असीतो न व्यथते न रिष्यति अभ्यम व्यजनक प्राप्तो असीति होवाच याज्ञवल्क्यः स होवाच जनको विदेह अभ्यम त्व गच्छतः याज्ञवल्क्ये यो नो भगवन् अभ्यम वेद्यसे नमस्ते अस्तु इमे विदेह अयम अहम अस्मि इति द्वित्वम ब्राह्मणम्. Of the sage identified with the pragya, the eastern direction is the vital force in the east. The southern direction, the vital force in the south. The western direction, the vital force in the west. The northern direction of the vital force in the north. The direction overhead, the vital force that is above the direction below is the vital force that is below. And all the directions are all the vital forces. This self is that which has been described as not this, not this. It is imperceptible, for it is not perceived, unshrinking, for it does not shrink, unattached, for it's not attached, untrammeled, it does not suffer nor perish. You have attained the fearless, O Janak and Yajnavalkya. said Yajnavalkya. Janak, emperor of Videha, said, may the fearless reach you. Fearless means Brahm. Venerable Yajnavalkya, who have made us know the fearless Brahma, salutations to you. Here is the empire of Videha, as also myself, at your disposal. So the self identified with a gross body functions in the gross realm. We have learnt that during the waking state. Identified with the heart, it moves in the subtle body in the dream state. This is self-identified with the heart, independent of the gross body and the organs, rests in the vital force. And when the enjoyments of the dreaming state gets fainter and fainter, when there's almost a total cessation of the activities of the heart, then it is said to have become identical or unified with the vital force. The similar mantra is in the Chandogya Upanishad also. Over there it says, in deep sleep, the prana absorbs the organs and the mind. The mind with all the organs gets united in the vital force in deep sleep. When the dreaming self becomes identified with the vital force, he identifies himself with everything in the universe. This is expressed in this mantra by the statement that the eastern quarter is his eastern vital air. The southern quarter is the southern vital air. The western quarter is the western, and the northern quarter is the northern. The upper quarter is the upper, the lower quarter is the lower. All quarters are all vital airs. So in other words, the self gets united into the cosmic prana. And what is a cosmic prana? It is a supreme self. The supreme self with which the individual self is identified is described as not this and not this. So this portion of the mantra, beginning with this Atma, is that which is indicated by not this, ending with it does not perish. We have seen that in the earlier mantras also, in this Upanishad. Now, after saying this, Rishi Yajnavalkya is telling King Janak, where would he go when he is liberated from this body? Because that was the question put in by him to King Janak. So Rishi explained to King Janak about the different states in which consciousness identifies itself with the body, mind, and prana, the waking, dream, and the deep sleep states. And over here in this mantra, he is instructing him about the Supreme Self. This is where the attainment of one completely fearlessness, and this is the state which alone is worthy of attainment. Fearlessness. A controlled mind, meditation on secret doctrines, possession of wealth, learning of all the Vedas, all Upanishads, they serve as equipment only for this. We should have this desire to attain this state of supreme bliss and fearlessness. And this is what Yajnavalkya is telling Janaka. And King Janaka, he was full of gratitude to the sage for having taken him to that supreme fearless state of Brahma. And as a mark of respect, what did he do, King Janaka? He placed his entire kingdom, not only the kingdom, he placed himself at the service of the sage. This is what we see towards the end. So sometimes these discourses, they look a little complicated, but we got to look at it. What these mantras, with the help of the mantras, where is this Rishi taking us? Because we all know this waking state. Most of our hours are spent in the waking state, in the gross state. Sure, few hours we sleep also. But even sleep is also so much dependent upon the quality of our waking state. If the waking state is peaceful, the sleep state will be peaceful too. But then we don't want to stay there. We want to have the deep sleep also. But then from the deep sleep, the fearlessness which is talking about actually, complete fearness and going into the oneness with the Brahma, that is even beyond that, which is called a Turiya Avastha. He did not mention the name over here, but when he talks about fearlessness, knowing the self, that's what that is. Because otherwise, a deep sleep we go into every day, but we don't see ourselves. But when we meditate, when we go into samadhi, then we know who we are. And that's where the fearlessness comes. Because fear is always from somebody else, some other. There's a fear. But when we have attained that oneness, there's only one, not two. What is there to be afraid of? So that's why indirectly in these verses he's pointing out towards the fourth state, the Chaturtha. So that's why I said the continuation of this is into the next section. Because these Upanishads sometimes, these days we break them down. But originally when this message was given to the students, they were not by the chapters, not by the sections. They have been broken down so that we are used to studying something like this. But it was a continuation from the previous verse to here. That's why when we read or study our Bhagavad Gita, each shlok is connected, each chapter is connected. When we study the Yoga Sutras also, there's a connection. Okay, so if you forget the last one, the next one will not make sense. So remember these three states, what he's talking about. Sometimes we get confused with the analogies. Just analogies are just analogies so that to make a point, we got to see the real meaning. Let's end it here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining.